Welcome, everyone. I'm really glad that you're here and to hear this presentation on scholarships and financial aid. There's so many resources available, and I'm going to let our guest take it away and explain everything to you.
Okay, sorry, I'm letting some people in, but let me introduce myself. My name is Susan Metzler, and I am a senior admissions advisor with New Mexico State University. I work with students in California. I am actually based in Phoenix. I usually make several trips a year to California, but haven't been in a while, sadly, and I miss you guys. But I know, like I said, I work with in admissions, but the reason I offered to do this workshop for your school is because before I came to New Mexico State, I worked at a high school, college and career counselor, and we were a really, really interesting high school, a large high school. We had a lot of students who had great financial need for college. We had some really high performing students. We had students who didn't have any financial need and could really go anywhere they wanted. So it was a big, a variety of students. And I really learned to work with a lot of different people with a lot of different backgrounds who had a lot of different needs when it came to paying for college. And what we did is, my time at the school, I just learned so much about scholarships and merit aid and how I could best help students. So hopefully you'll walk away today having learned something, have some ideas, have some success with getting some money for college. And I'm so lucky today because I have a special guest, Michael, who's right here. Hi, Michael, who is with New Mexico State University. He does work in our financial aid and scholarship office. So he is our outreach coordinator. He is the person who is working with, students and, sorry, I'm still clicking people and I'm getting distracted, with students and financial aid and scholarship every single day. So he was, kind enough to come, and he's going to launch this presentation talking a little bit about financial aid, because there are really two parts of everything. I mean, there's the financial aid that is, need-based, that it grants and loans and work study. But then there are also separately, there's merit aid and private scholarships that I'll get a little bit more into. So as I am still having people join us, I am going to let Michael start us off.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Susan. So give me just a second to go ahead and share my PowerPoint. All right. There we go. So like Susan said, my name is Michael Kuechmann. I am the outreach advisor for University Financial Aid and Scholarship Services here at New Mexico State University. I'm the one who does all the presentations for high schools, for orientations. I talk about scholarships. I talk about federal financial aid. And then I'm also kind of the FAFSA person. I supervise kind of our little FAFSA help team. So I have a real quick presentation for you all. I'm just going to briefly touch on the different types of federal financial aid. I'm going to talk about, the more common ones. I'm going to talk about FAFSA. Then I'm going to mention a few other ones. Then after that, I love answering questions from students. That's probably one of my favorite parts of this job. So if you guys have any questions afterwards, you want, more information or more of an explanation on anything, I could definitely provide that for you all as well. So financial aid consists of 4 parts. It consists of loans, grants, work study, and scholarship. Now the loans, grants, and work study portion of financial aid, that is all federal aid. Now, to qualify for federal financial aid, you're going to need to complete and submit a FAFSA application. What the FAFSA is it's just an application that determines your need and eligibility to receive federal aid. So the FAFSA is an annual application. It opens every year on October 1st. I know our school, we do have a priority deadline of March 1st. I'm sure other schools have priority deadlines as well. But when it comes to the FAFSA, there is no hard deadline or anything like that. You could submit your FAFSA application for the current school year after the school year has already started. Even though we don't normally recommend you do that, we normally try to recommend that you get your FAFSA application in as soon as possible. So for the current school year starting here it starts in about 2 weeks for us. students completed their 2021, 2022 FAFSA application. And then come this fall, that is when the 2022, 2023 FAFSA application will open. I know one of my favorite things to do with the FAFSA application, I think the FAFSA is extremely important. I think all students who are eligible to do a FAFSA should do a FAFSA. So I visit a lot of schools to do FAFSA nights. I host FAFSA nights here on campus as well. So if it's going to be your first time doing the FAFSA application, if you're unfamiliar with the FAFSA, I would recommend reaching out to a university that you're interested in, see if they host FAFSA nights either on their campus or at your high school, see if they set up FAFSA appointments to give you one-on-one help. I highly recommend, like I said, all students do a FAFSA, because if you do not have a FAFSA on file, then you won't have the chance at receiving loans, grants, or work study, which I'm going to talk about here in just a second, starting with work study. So what federal work study is it's essentially a part-time job where you could work up to 20 hours a week, where you earn up to your work study award. Now, when you're filling out the FAFSA, you're going to get a question that says, are you interested in work study? You have 3 different options. You could select yes, no, or don't know. I always recommend that all students select yes, that they are interested in work study. Even if you're still uncertain, even if you're still not sure if you want a work study position, that's okay. You could always decline it later on, or you could choose to not seek out a work study position. But if you decline work study on your FAFSA, you might have to take a couple extra steps later down the road to have another chance at being considered for work study. So again, when you're doing your FAFSA application and you get that work study question, be sure to definitely check yes, that you are interested in work study. So like I said, if you do your FAFSA and if you are selected for a work study, you will receive a work study award. So let's say, for example, you receive $3,000 worth of work study per semester. You can then earn up to that $3,000 from your part-time job. Now, all universities handle work study differently. They all do different things. So I don't know how other schools do it, but I'm just going to talk about it from our perspective. So students who are awarded work study, they can accept their work study award and then start seeking out jobs through the Handshake app, which is just an app that helps our students find jobs. But something that's really cool about these jobs for work study for students is that a lot of universities, us included, offer on-campus jobs. You could work in the library, you could work in some of the student union buildings, you could work in some of the research labs, but there are also off-campus work study positions as well. I know there's a ton of different jobs and a ton of different great opportunities with work study positions. So all students who maybe get offered work study, I definitely recommend you consider accepting your work study award if you get it and working one of those work study jobs. You'll get some extra money to help you pay for school, and they are definitely great opportunities and great experiences. One last thing, so work study is need-based, and again, your FAFSA will determine your financial need and your eligibility. But because work study is need-based, even if you are interested in work study, even if you select yes on your FAFSA, you want to be considered for work study, you may not be awarded it because you may not have met the need threshold. However, something we do and something I know other colleges and universities do as well is they will open up a work study waiting list prior to the start of the semester that you can get on if you want to have another chance at being awarded work study if you weren't initially awarded it. So, you know, I've been talking about how great work study is. So if you are interested in work study and you weren't awarded it, definitely reach out to the financial aid office at the institution you're attending. You know, listen during your orientations, your presentations, and find out if they also do offer that work study waiting list as well. So that was 1/3 of the federal financial aid. The second third is federal grants. So what grants are is that they're another form of need-based aid, just like work study. And grants are a form of aid that do not need to be repaid. So the way I kind of explain it is that grants are kind of closer to scholarships in the way that you receive the money, you receive the grant money, and you use that to help pay for school and you don't have to pay it back. Loans, which I'll talk about here in just a minute, you do have to pay back, but grants, you do not have to pay back. So grants are reserved for students with the highest financial need. And a lot of these grants do have limited funds available. So again, That's another reason to be sure to try to get your FAFSA in early. If your school has a priority deadline, try to get your FAFSA in before then, because you may have a better chance at receiving some of those more limited grant funds. Now, a couple of the big grants, the biggest grant that the most of our students probably receive is definitely that Pell Grant. Everybody's looking for the Pell Grant. Everybody wants the Pell Grant. That is definitely the most common grant that we see. But a few other common grants, we have the SEOG grant, we have the College Affordability Grant. Those are two other grants that are also extremely common. A lot of students get them just like the Pell, but those grants usually have a little, lower award amount. Some of those grants do have limited funds to be split among students. So again, get your FAFSA in early. And then also another common grant that we see a lot is the Teach Grant. This is a grant for students who want to become teachers. This is a little bit of a different grant. If you get the Pell, you get your money from the Pell. You just have to make sure you're meeting your requirements and passing your classes. Whereas the Teach Grant, that's a bit of a more specific grant that has actual requirements. So if you are attending a school and you do receive some of these grants from your FAFSA, whether it be the Pell or the SEOG, or maybe you receive a Teach Grant because you're pursuing a teaching degree, definitely be sure to communicate with the financial aid office at your school and see what the requirements are for these grants. Like I said, the Pell, your requirements, you just have to be a student, you just have to be passing your classes. Compared to the Teach Grant, you have to be, you have to become a teacher, you have to meet all this other criteria. So grants are great. Money you don't have to pay back, but just keep an eye out. So if you do receive some of these grants, make sure you are familiar with the requirements so you can continue receiving them and continue benefiting from them. So that was 2/3 of federal financial aid, work study, and grants. Now to go over the third and final part of federal financial aid, this is the student loans. Now I know student loans aren't always ideal. You do have to take them out. You do generate interest. You do have to pay them back. However, at the end of the day, many students do need additional help in covering their educational costs, and student loans are really their only option. So without student loans, they wouldn't be able to come to college, because student loans really do allow so many students that opportunity to attend college, that opportunity to receive an education, and that opportunity to get a degree. So there are two main types of federal student loans. There are subsidized and unsubsidized. Now, again, these are awarded to you based on the information provided on your FAFSA application. And the major difference between the two is that subsidized loans are need-based. You have to reach a certain need threshold that's determined by your FAFSA. And the other big thing about subsidized loans is that they do not accumulate interest while you are still in school. They do not start accumulating interest until after you leave school. That's compared to the unsubsidized loan. Unsubsidized loans aren't need-based. Everybody gets offered unsubsidized loans, but those do start accumulating interest while you are in school. Those do start accumulating interest as soon as they pay out to you. Now, when it comes to paying back these loans, the student loan process is honestly made super easy. You'll get offered your loans from your university after you submit a FAFSA. You'll have the option to, accept them, decline them, accept them partially, or just leave them in the offer status. And then after you go and accept these student loans, all student loan borrowers are actually required to go through a mandatory loan entrance counseling through the U.S. Department of Education. So if you're thinking, I might need loans, but I really don't know all that information about the actual process and how they work, that loan entrance counseling is actually made to cover all that information and give you what you need to know. So that loan entrance counseling will cover everything from the initial steps of receiving that loan to the steps that are when you're done with college. Now, if you do go the student loan route, like I said, subsidized does accumulate interest in school, unsubsidized does accumulate interest in school. One thing to keep in mind about these student loans is that you do not have to pay them back while you're still in school. With these loans, you do not have to start paying them back until 6 months after you leave school. So you have that 6-month grace period to, get your ducks in a row, search for a job, decide if you're continuing your education and going to grad school or what. But when you do have to start paying your loans back, there are many different repayment options to suit your needs and suit your lifestyle. There are 10-year repayment plans, 20-year repayment plans, income-based repayment plans, loan forgiveness programs. And again, I know I'm throwing a ton of information at you all, but all of this information about, repayment plans, all of that will be covered in that loan entrance counseling if you do decide to go that student loan route. So that was the three main types of federal financial aid. Now, to receive any type of federal financial aid, to receive loans, grants, or work study, you're going to need to be meeting SAP. So what SAP is it stands for Satisfactory Academic Progress. And again, this is a federal thing. All schools do this. All schools require you to be meeting SAP. But the three requirements for SAP is you must keep a cumulative GPA of 2.0 or higher. You must also have a 70% completion or passing rate for all of your courses. And then you must also finish your degree within 150% of the degree plan's length. Now, like I said, you have to be meeting SAP to receive any type of federal financial aid. All schools, all universities enforce SAP. So, if you are receiving federal financial aid, if you did your FAFSA and you have loans and grants and work study, just be sure to check your SAP at the end of every semester and at the end of every year, just to make sure you still are meeting SAP and still are hitting those requirements. Because if you stop meeting those requirements, if you stop meeting SAP, you may not be able to continue receiving federal financial aid. So it's definitely something to just keep in the back of your mind, definitely something for you all to be aware of. So those were the three main types of federal financial aid: the loans, the grants, and the work study. All of that is awarded through your FAFSA. All of that is handled by you, the student, with your university, with the U.S. Department of Education, and with your FAFSA. Now, there are two other last things I'm going to talk about that relate to loans. The first one being Parent Plus loans. So what these Parent Plus loans are is that they are loans taken out by the parent for their dependent student. Parents do have to apply through the U.S. Department of Education, and they do have to be approved for one of these Parent Plus loans. They get approved by having good credit history and everything like that. And then these Parent Plus loans are used to cover any remaining balances within the student's budget that is not covered by their other forms of financial aid. These Parent Plus loans are becoming increasingly popular. So I don't know if we have any parents on the call with us tonight, but Parent Plus loans are getting big. We're seeing more and more of them each semester. They're just another option if the parents are going to be more involved in their students' education, and if the parents wanted to have the loan in their name as opposed to having their student take it out in theirs. But again, these Parent Plus loans are completely optional. They're a completely separate thing from, the main types of federal financial aid that I just finished going over. Now, the last type of loan I'm going to briefly touch on are what we call private or alternative loans. Now, these are loans that are through Wells Fargo, Discover, Sallie Mae. These are loans that are not through the federal government. These are loans that are from third parties. These are loans that, don't really have anything to do with your school, with the FAFSA, anything like that. So when it comes to students pursuing these private or alternative loans, we typically only recommend these as a last resort. Students are encouraged to exhaust all other federal aid opportunities, exhaust all of their, subsidized and unsubsidized loans, exhaust all their grants, exhaust all their work study. And students are also encouraged to exhaust all scholarship opportunities before even considering these private or alternative loans. When it comes to these private loans, a lot of times they have much higher interest rates than the federal loans. They have much harsher repayment plans than the federal loans. The federal loans, they have pretty low interest and they have extremely reasonable repayment plans. So that's why we always do recommend these only as a last resort. If you have no other way of making ends meet, or if you have to pay off a previous semester's balance or something like that. I know our financial aid office keeps a list of lenders on our financial aid website. The list is just there just to help students. If you do have to go the private or alternative loan route while you are in school, definitely consult with your financial aid office first. Definitely talk to them about your options, talk to them about all of your options, and then talk to them and see if they have a list of lenders. Again, the lenders are going to be completely separate, but they'll probably have a list of, frequently used lenders. So again, only be considering these outside loans as a last resort. And if you are going to go that outside loan route, definitely consult with your financial aid office first. Getting your FAFSA done and getting those federal loans will definitely most likely be better for you in the long run, because like I said, they do have lower interest rates and they do have more reasonable repayment plans for them. But that was all the information I had for this presentation. I know I went through a lot of information really fast, but for the most part, I just was scratching the surface. I could see there are 5, things typed in the chat. So I'll view the chat in just a second, and I could kind of answer those questions, talk more about anything you would like. But, like I said, if you guys do have any more questions, want me to talk more in depth about anything, I can definitely do that as well. But for the time being, I'll go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen. I don't know if you want me to do these questions now, Susan, or if you want to take over for the time being, but I will stop sharing my screen and we could go from there.
Why don't you answer? Because I think some of them are answered already, but someone asked a question about filling out the FAFSA. Why don't you take that one? That would be great.
So I see, how long does it typically take to fill out the FAFSA? I don't think my student will qualify. Is there some type of rule of thumb? That's whether you should try. So all students, all families, I always recommend that they do a FAFSA if eligible. Now, to be eligible to do the FAFSA application, you do have to be a U.S. citizen or a qualifying non-citizen, and this is only for the student. Parents don't have to be citizens. So if your student is a U.S. citizen, that's all they need to be able to do the FAFSA. In terms of how long does it typically take to fill out the FAFSA, the first time doing your FAFSA will always take the longest, because in following years, you could renew your FAFSA application and it will just draw the majority of the information from the prior year. Now, when it comes to how long it will take, like I said, that first year always takes the longest. I would normally say if you're doing it on your own for the first time and you're not that familiar with it, it might take about an hour to get it done. Now, the thing that takes the longest in the FAFSA is the financial section. It will ask you questions about student financials and parent financials, which include taxes filed 2 years prior. So that could take a lot of time, finding your tax documents, having to enter in all that information to the FAFSA application. However, the FAFSA does have what is called the IRS DRT, which stands for Data Retrieval Tool. So you will actually have the option, if you did file, to link your taxes to the FAFSA application, and it will automatically pull all of that information. And that honestly saves a ton of time. Now you ask, is there some type of rule of thumb whether you should try or not try to do the FAFSA? All students, again, I know I've said this like 5 times, all students should do the FAFSA. If you are having issues with the FAFSA, if you're a little uncertain about it, or you don't know what you're doing with it, reach out to any college, reach out to any university. You could even reach out to us. You could reach out to me and my team, and we will help you with the FAFSA application. Colleges and universities provide free FAFSA help. Never pay for FAFSA help online or in person, because like I said, you could reach out to any college or university. You could reach out to me and my team, and we will help you with the FAFSA. We will walk you through every step. It doesn't matter if it takes 1 hour, 2 hours. It doesn't matter if we have to come back the next day or the next week. We will help absolutely anybody with their FAFSA application, because that is just how important it is for all students who are eligible to get that FAFSA application done. Really good question, though. Thank you. Let me see. There are a lot of questions, so let me kind of scroll through this. We got a question, what are credit hours? So classes are, I may not be the best person to answer this question, Susan, you could jump in if you want to, but classes are usually awarded a credit hour that is reflective of the amount of time spent in and out of the classroom for the work you do. So majority of classes are typically 3 credit hours. Some classes are 4 credit hours. So like I said, for one of the requirements, you have to be taking X amount of credit hours. So you have to be meeting 15 credit hours to be eligible for something. Then you just typically take, 5 classes a semester, since the majority of classes are typically worth 3 credit hours. I see Leonardo actually answered that question. Thanks for answering. Oh, I see there are actually a couple of you who answered that question in the chat. So thanks for that. Another question we got, can I apply for both work study and grants? Yes. So when you do your FAFSA application, that automatically determines your eligibility for work study, for grants, and for student loans. You don't have to apply for each one separately. All you have to do is do that FAFSA application, and it will apply or determine your eligibility to receive all 3 of those at once. After you do your FAFSA and after your institution of choice processes your FAFSA, then they will package your financial aid award, which will include if you receive those 3 types of federal aid, as well as any other aid you receive. I got a question, can I go more in depth about the TEACH grant, such as requirements? If you want actual concrete requirements, you'll have to give me a minute to pull that up. But what I do know off the top of my head when it comes to the TEACH grant, students have to be pursuing a teaching degree. They have to enroll in a qualifying school or be teaching a qualifying subject as outlined by the TEACH grant after they do finish their degree and do finish college. Typically, the requirements for the TEACH grant are you have to be teaching in a high need subject area. So you need to be teaching certain grade levels or certain subjects like math, or you have to go in and become a teacher typically at a lower income school. Like I said, I could pull up the TEACH grant requirements here in a second and give you more concrete information about the TEACH grant. But the reason I was kind of mentioning the TEACH grant when I was on that slide is because, the Pell and the College Affordability and the SEOG, you just get those grants. You just have to be meeting SAP and you'll continue getting your money. But like I was just kind of talking about now, the TEACH grant does have other requirements. But if you were a recipient of the TEACH grant, and let's say you change your degree from being a teacher, the money you got from that TEACH grant will actually turn into an unsubsidized loan. That's why I was talking, always familiarize yourself with what you're receiving, so that way you don't get caught off guard or anything like that. But after this, I'll pull up the information for the TEACH grant and I could come back to that, or I could post it in the chat. And I see Leonardo again said, unless you're very wealthy, everybody should fill out a FAFSA. Definitely agree with that. I also think even if your family is very wealthy, you should fill one out anyway. You never know what you're going to get. A lot of students come to me and they say, I don't think I should do a FAFSA because I don't think I'll get anything. And I always tell them, well, with that attitude, you definitely won't get anything because you're not going to do it, then you can't get anything. So no matter what, I definitely think all students should fill out a FAFSA, even if your family is wealthy, even if you think you don't need it, even if you think you won't get anything, definitely be sure to fill out your FAFSA as well. And then deadline for sending in the FAFSA. There is no hard deadline for the FAFSA application or anything like that. Some colleges or universities have a priority deadline. That just means if you get your FAFSA in before that priority deadline, you may have a better chance of receiving some of the more limited grants or work study funds. But there's no deadline for the FAFSA. You could be halfway through the semester and still fill out your FAFSA and it will still be processed and you'll still get federal aid and everything like that. Let me see. I think that was the majority of the questions. Should we be trying to get the application in before we know where the student is going to college? That is a very good question as well. So when you do your FAFSA application, you could list up to 10 schools that you want to have that FAFSA application sent to. You could either search up the schools and select them through the search menu, or you could enter in the school with the school's federal code. But like I said, you could add up to 10 schools in your FAFSA application. So what I would recommend doing is if you don't know exactly which schools you're going to yet, you could just enter in a couple that you're interested in, enter in the schools you're interested in. And then later down the road, let's say you decide you're going to a different school that you didn't include in your FAFSA, that's okay. You could just go back into your FAFSA, even if after it's already been submitted, even after it's already been accepted. And you could just add in that school after the fact and just resubmit it. And then that school will receive your FAFSA as well. One last question, and then Susan, you can take over. Is it unnecessary to apply FAFSA to community college? No. Always do your FAFSA. Do your FAFSA for universities, do your FAFSA for community colleges, do your FAFSA for any school that will accept one. Always do your FAFSA no matter what. That is the one thing I tell everybody. That's the one thing I will continue to tell everybody. Even if it's community college, even if you think you won't need your FAFSA, you should still do it. You might get grants, you might get work study. Just do your FAFSA no matter what. I've said that 100 times, but that's because I just think it's so important that all students do their FAFSA. But for the time being, I'll continue moderating the chat. I expected to only speak for like 5 or 10 minutes. I got kind of long-winded. I'm sorry, I'm really into what I talk about. But for now, Susan, I'll go ahead and I'll let you take it over.
No, I'm so glad you did, because you covered things that I don't know about. So listening to your presentation, I just learned a lot. And I will say this, as a parent who has completed the FAFSA, the first time you do it is the most difficult. It takes the longest. The biggest issue I had with it, remembering everyone's passwords and logins. But once you do it one time, every other year after that, it definitely is much easier.
Absolutely, yeah.
That the first year, I will say, I was telling students to do the FAFSA. I tried to do it myself. At one point, I had to turn my laptop off and just walk away because I was like getting frustrated. But after that, yeah, super, super easy. And there are so many resources out there. So many people that are willing to help you with the FAFSA. You usually don't have to look very far. Looks like your own district is having an event every year. I know where I am, a lot of the community colleges have them. And we have them. And we actually, Michael has a whole team of students and people that are trained on the FAFSA that help anyone, log in, and they will do like a Zoom type thing and help them, walk them through the FAFSA. So there are so many resources out there. So yes, do your FAFSA. You never know. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here. I'm going to share my screen. And I have to tell you guys that I am not a graphic artist at all or designer. And I have kind of, I was looking at my slides and I'm like, oh, I need to do better at putting graphics together. I work with so many people that are so good at doing presentations as far as their slideshows, and mine are lacking a little bit, so I need to work on that. But paying for college. So this basically was the screen I was going to show you when we started with our names on it, but I am Susan Metzler, Senior Admissions Advisor, and Michael is with our financial aid and outreach. So he just covered his part and he covered a lot of great information. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about how you're going to pay for college. Michael went over financial aid and loans. So now you have a little bit more information about getting financial aid, getting loans, completing the FAFSA. But what I'm going to talk about, briefly, I'm going to talk about some tuition discounts, but then what I really want to talk about is scholarships. So tuition discounts. We are part of the WUI. You're in California. California is a WUI state. What does the WUI mean? It means Western Undergraduate Exchange. Basically, how this was started is there are so many different colleges in the Northeast, so many private colleges, so many public colleges in the East, the Eastern Seaboard. But out West, we don't have as many schools. Students really don't have a lot of the choices that students back East have. So the Western Undergraduate Exchange was formed, and it is basically a collaboration between states in the West Coast where we work together and give students in neighboring states tuition discounts. What is really, really important to know is this is for public universities and community colleges. Public schools are not part of the WUI, so it is only for public institutions, and not every public institution in every state is part of the WUI. Another important thing to know is that each school within the WUI, who's part of the WUI system, sets their own rules and guidelines. That means what one school does, say a school in Nevada, what they're doing with their WUI does not mean that a school in Washington State is doing the same thing. For students who are interested in WUI schools, they're going to have to do a little research, talk to the admissions advisor with that school, look at the website to see what the WUI can do for them. So usually what the WUI does is offer tuition for an out-of-state student who's in a WUI state It's greatly discounted tuition. It's usually 150% of in-state tuition. How it differs is some schools will use the WUI discount as your merit scholarship. So if you qualify for the WUI discount, that is your merit scholarship. Some schools like ours will actually give all California students the WUI discount, and you can earn merit scholarships in addition to that. Some of the WUI discounts are only given to students who are interested in pursuing certain majors. As an example, the University of Arizona, they are part of the WUI, but they only give the WUI discount for 2 different majors that they have. One is a mining major and one is an agricultural degree, but there are only 2 majors where students can get the WUI discount. Schools, Colorado State University, they use the WUI discount as a merit scholarship. A really popular school with students in California is the University of Oregon. They're not part of the WUI. So even though they are a public university in the West, they're not part of the WUI. They don't offer any sort of WUI discounts. So this is just something, if you go onto the WUI website, all you have to do is do a Google search WUI, and you will actually see all of the schools that are part of this organization. Other tuition discounts that students can get are through institutions that sometimes they give discounts to students who are pursuing a certain major. To students who have a certain GPA. Sometimes students get a tuition discount if they are the child of an alumni. The University of Missouri does this. If a parent goes to the University of Missouri and graduates, their children can get a tuition discount. This is just something that you have to check with schools. And I always tell students that if you're talking, meeting with different colleges, you might want to ask, do you have any sort of tuition discounts? In addition, that are separate than merit scholarships. So some of them do, most of them don't, but it's something that's really worth asking because you can save a lot of money if you can get a tuition discount at a university. Now, the tuition discounts are very different than merit scholarships. Merit scholarships are really the most generous scholarships out there that are offered. They are offered by the universities or the colleges, and they're based on high school academics. Some schools will also use standardized test scores like the SAT or the ACT. Some schools will use a combination of the 2. If a student has a test score, they will use an academic index where they will take the test score and the student's GPA and kind of combine them together and come up with a number and base their merit scholarships on that. Some schools will actually consider things like activities or special talents when offering merit scholarships. Activities can involve different, things in leadership, community service, student government. Special talents sometimes include something like a musical ability or an athletic ability. I know a student who actually received a small merit scholarship because she was in high school band and they wanted her to be part of the college band. And this was kind of, something that they offered her. They would give her a little bit of extra money if she came and joined their marching band. So merit scholarship is basically just what it sounds, merit. They don't take financial lead into account. You're offered the scholarship completely based on your own, accomplishments. So this is really where you see students getting the biggest bang for their buck are in merit scholarships. And we also have private scholarships out there. And those are the scholarships that students actually have to apply for. And many of them are need-based. They're based on the financial need of a student. So a lot of these need-based scholarships will want students to submit a copy of their FAFSA or a copy of the page that shows their estimated family contribution. You'll hear that a lot, EFC. It's your estimated family contribution. And when you do the FAFSA, it gives you your estimated family contribution number. And a lot of these private scholarships will ask for that number. But then we also have a lot of specific scholarships that really focus on something. It can be something like a major, your future major. There's scholarships out there for future nurses, for people going into STEM. There are also scholarships for people that have a certain interest or a certain focus. It might be based on your family's, ethnicity, GPA. A lot of times they're looking for a specific GPA. I worked with a student who got a gardening scholarship. It was small, but what she had to do was design a garden in a public park. And she did that and wrote an essay on why she was interested in gardening and in botany and horticulture. And she was awarded a scholarship just because she was interested in gardening. So, oh, my font came up very small. So just some scholarship facts. The average scholarship that a student is receiving is worth $7,400. We hear a lot about these students that get full ride scholarships or they win these giant $30,000, $40,000 scholarships, but really only 0.2% of all students are getting anything that's over $25,000 in scholarships. This doesn't include, the grants and the financial aid that Michael talked about, but these are just pure scholarships. What I thought was really interesting is NCAA awards more than $3.6 billion in athletic scholarships annually, but only 1.3% of all college athletes receive any sort of full or partial athletic scholarship. I think a lot of people think that they're going to go off to college and get a full athletic scholarship, but that really doesn't happen very often. I worked with a student. I worked at a university where I worked with a student who was the Pac-12 champ diver and the diver of the year. And he went to the Olympic trials and he was this amazing, accomplished, D1 diver, and he didn't get a full scholarship. His scholarship was only a partial scholarship. So, I think a lot of people kind of have their hopes set on athletic scholarships, and they do happen, but you should really explore other options too, because it probably is not going to pay for your entire college. So California, I made this for California students. I worked on this yesterday. Cost of attendance. This is what it costs to attend a college or university. These are the published costs. This is before any sort of scholarship or financial aid. This is taking into account tuition, fees, room, board, supplies, transportation, any sort of money that you would need to attend a year at college without any aid at all. And as you can see, the numbers are somewhat staggering. This is by the year. This isn't total. This is per year. But like I said, most people aren't paying this. There are some that are paying it, but most students are not paying this large amount. So this is just something to be aware of when you are looking at colleges, that it costs a lot of money every year. A lot of students will actually work with, getting scholarships, getting financial aid, and they're really just focused on 1 year. They don't realize that they are going to be there for at least 4 years, and they have to plan accordingly. I did include New Mexico State University, my university, and Northern Arizona University down here, because we are part of the WUE, and our WUE is automatic. So this is basically the cost of attendance for a student coming from California at these schools. Not picking on Oregon, but University of Oregon is not part of the WUE. So you can see just out-of-state tuition is a little bit more. The University of Chicago is the winner. It is currently the most expensive school in the country right now at just over $81,000 a year cost of attendance. And of course, places like Chicago and Boston, these schools are going to be a little more expensive also because the cost of living in these cities is more expensive. So that's something to take into account too when you're looking at schools, is the cost of living in the area where you are going to school. So merit scholarships, how do you get the best merit scholarship? What you're going to do is, when you're applying to schools and you're researching schools, is compare your stats to admitted students. If you look at a college website, you're going to be able to find the admitted student profile. And what that is going to show you for the year before or the year before that, students that were admitted by that university and what the average GPA was, and if they required test scores, what the average test scores were. If you fall kind of in the middle of that range, you might get a merit scholarship, but you're probably not going to get a huge one. Now, if you're above basically the average, you're more likely to get a merit scholarship. What happens is a lot of students are so focused on being admitted to a school that they apply to all of these basically very competitive schools, and then they're very disappointed when they don't get any sort of merit scholarship, so they don't get a lot of money in financial aid from the schools. And it is because they're in the middle of the pack. Really, if you want to maximize a merit scholarship, you should look at a school where your stats are on the higher end, okay? that is probably going to give you more merit scholarships than a school where you are in the middle of the pack or lower end. Most schools will have merit scholarships on their website. Sometimes they give you a range. Sometimes they don't tell you what or why or how you get the merit scholarships. But if it is a public university, they are much more likely to tell you what merit scholarship you will qualify for. So this is just a really good way for you to do your research and kind of see where you fall or where you might be getting these merit scholarships. Sometimes students are pleasantly surprised. They'll apply to a school they don't think they're maybe going to get a lot of money in merit scholarships, and then they do. So it does happen. But this is just something that you really don't know what you're going to get until you get that scholarship and financial aid offer letter from the school. Most merit scholarships you are automatically considered. You don't have to apply for them. Your application to the university or college is considered your scholarship application for merit scholarships. Sometimes schools do have additional merit scholarships, or they do want you to apply for merit scholarships. This is just something that you're going to want to look on the college website or ask your admissions advisor. Some schools, if you get the WUI tuition discount, that is considered your scholarship. This is something else that you should know. Most schools, what they'll do is they'll give you what your best offer is. If your WUI discount is better than your merit scholarship, they will give you the WUI discount. Our school actually gives you both the WUI discount and merit scholarships, but not all schools do. Are there any sort of deadlines in order to be considered for scholarships, for merit scholarships? At New Mexico State University, we have rolling admissions. We're accepting applications all the time, but we do have a hard December 1st deadline to be considered for our top merit scholarships. And ask your admissions advisor, what are you basing your merit scholarships on? Is it just your GPA? Is it your weighted GPA? Is it an unweighted GPA? Are you test optional? Do you need test scores? Do you look at our activities? Do you look at our talents? These are all things for you to inquire about. Okay, so some merit scholarship questions. Ask yourself, what's the cost of attendance? Is the scholarship renewable? Is it a one-time scholarship, or is it something that is going to renew every 4 years or every year for 4 years, 8 semesters? What happens if you go to school for more than 4 years? What happens if you decide to take a semester off? These are all things that you need to know about. Can you stack scholarships? If you win multiple scholarships from the university, can you stack them on top of each other, or do you have to default to the best scholarship? This is something that I want to bring up because I've seen this happen and it's really, really heartbreaking, is are you able to keep it? Sometimes students are offered a scholarship and the requirements to keep that scholarship every year are maybe challenging. And they accept the scholarship, they go to a university to find out that they cannot keep their scholarship. What is required to renew the scholarship each year? Sometimes it's your GPA. A lot of times schools are looking for a course load. They want you to take 15 credit hours because you need 15 credit hours every single semester for 4 years to graduate on time. Sometimes schools want specific major related classes in your schedule where you have to complete so many credits in your major in order to keep your scholarship. So this is something that students really have to look at the requirements for the scholarship and really ask themselves, am I going to be able to keep this scholarship? I've seen students who have graduated from high school with maybe a 3.5 GPA, and they need a 3.8 GPA to keep their college scholarship. They have to be realistic. Are they going to be able to get that 3.8? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble talking here. 3.8 GPA every single semester. So this is something that students really have to do a little bit of research and digging and find out what they need to do to keep the scholarship. So then we also have private scholarships. There are different sites out there, so many different sites, College Board, FastWeb, scholarships.com. I highly recommend that all students look at these websites for scholarships, but keep in mind that every student in the country is looking at the same website and applying for the same scholarships. My experience, students have a higher success rate of winning scholarships if they're looking locally or within their own state. A lot of these scholarships are smaller. They're not the $20,000 scholarships, but students can win multiple scholarships and it can really, really add up. There's not as much, the competition isn't as great. not as many students are applying for these scholarships. How you would look locally is you would check with your high school. You would look at libraries, employers. I've had students that have received scholarships from their parents' employers, from their own employers. College websites. Michael does a fantastic job on our website of posting private scholarships, and he actually does a little research to make sure they're legit before he posts them, and we all thank him for that. Local businesses, a lot of civic organizations like Rotary clubs, the Kiwanis, they have scholarships for students in their area. So this is something that high school students should do, is really kind of go out there and look for these local scholarships. Even, you might look at your own high school website. You might even look at other high school websites. Some schools are better about posting scholarships than others. Libraries. I'm in Phoenix. Our Phoenix library does a great job with posting scholarships for students, usually in Arizona and in our county. I've had students who live in other towns in Arizona, and I recommend the Phoenix Public Library, and they'll say, I don't live in Phoenix. It's okay. This is public information on their website. You can look at it. You can see if there are any scholarships that you match up for. Not all scholarships are legitimate. This is something you should never pay money or provide a social security number to a scholarship site. That's really, really important, because unfortunately there are scammers who are out there who are trying to take advantage of people. So getting started with private scholarships, what I always have students do when I was working with high school students is put together a scholarship packet. This is something you can do right now. You don't have to wait. What you're going to do for a scholarship packet is put together a personal statement. Almost every single scholarship asks for some sort of essay. They don't vary that much. They don't change. If you have a really good, solid essay, you can always go in and change it. You can always kind of tweak it so it provides the information that the scholarship is looking for. I've had students that have written personal statements for a scholarship packet, and they've even used it when they're applying for colleges. So this is something that every student should have in their tool belt, is a really solid personal statement. It's about you. It's about your college plans. It's where you've been. It's where you're going. It's your career goals. It's hard for students to write about themselves, but this is something that they're going to have to do. And working on it now, before a scholarship deadline is looming, is the perfect time to do it. Students, when they write their personal statement, should have several eyes look at it. Having their best friend look at it is probably not the ideal person to give honest feedback. Teachers, and I've had students who have even gone to maybe their 8th grade English teacher and asked them to read their essay. So it doesn't necessarily have to be your current English teacher or an English teacher, but having somebody read through your essay, make suggestions, who's going to look at it with a critical eye is really, really important. Having more than one person read over it is really, really important. A student should put together a resume with their school activities, any jobs they've had, any hobbies they've had. Yes, things like babysitting, pet sitting, they can include all of that if they haven't had a lot of jobs, working for a company before. A student should have a copy of their most recent transcript in their scholarship packet. And I have 3 recommendations. Most scholarships will ask for 2, but there always seems to be a scramble with students looking for a last minute recommendation. They might ask 2 people for recommendations, and maybe one person is busy and can't get to it right away. Maybe another person is, can do it for them, but they can't do it right now. So I always ask students that they should ask for at least 3 recommendations. And when you complete the FAFSA after October 1st, you should save a copy of that page that shows your estimated family contribution. Once you have your scholarship packet put together, applying for private scholarships is really, really easy because you have all of your tools right there. I think that's the biggest thing that holds students up with when they're applying for scholarships is it's overwhelming, the things that they have to pull together to apply for a scholarship. But if you already have everything together, it makes it really easy, and then you can apply for a lot of them. We used to have at our school, we had a scholarship club, and it was where students would come together at lunch every other week, and they would share scholarships that they had found. Maybe it was a scholarship that they found that wasn't good for them, but it was a good fit for one of their fellow students. They would, help each other out. They would read over their personal statements. They would help them put things together. And it became just a really, really neat club and a way for students to learn more about scholarships and win more scholarships. Ooh, I'm out of time here. Something that's really important is when you do have someone who helps you get a scholarship, that you send them a thank you note. So, teachers write so many different letters of recommendation. They help students out, and they really appreciate getting a thank you note. Another thing that's really important is go over everything very, very carefully. I have students that they disqualify themselves from different scholarships. A scholarship might say that they prefer someone who has a 3.5 GPA, or they prefer someone who's studying something in STEM. So students won't apply for it if they don't have that 3.5 GPA. So they pull themselves out of the running. Unless a scholarship says this is required, they should still consider it and maybe apply for it. I've had students that have won scholarships that you would never, thought in a million years that they would win. They don't match up to what that scholarship committee was looking for, but they sold themselves well. They, explained why they were applying for that scholarship, even though they weren't 7 feet tall and Polish, but they were interested in this, and they explained why they were applying for the scholarship. And it was really surprising how many students actually were awarded scholarships. I think one of the biggest takeaways for students who are applying for scholarships is know your audience. Do research on the organization or the company that is offering the scholarship. You should never, ever lie. You should never make things up. But if you know who you're addressing, your audience, can really help a lot. If it is a nonprofit group, you might want to mention some of the community service, or if there's any sort of nonprofit work that you have done or you're interested in, you might want to bring that up, because the people that are reading your scholarship application are going to like that. If it's a technology company, you might want to mention in your essay, your experience or your interest in STEM. So knowing your audience is really important. Okay, I've seen it help students greatly when they actually do a little background research on the organization or the company or the nonprofit group that they're applying for a scholarship with. Of course, you should always be honest. You should always be authentic. Your essay should always be in your own voice. Students sometimes have trouble writing their essay. So we found that interviewing students, instead of having them write, having them basically record, themselves talking about their goals, their school experience, what they're looking for, is really, really helpful to get started with an essay. For those people that do offer you a scholarship, please stay in touch with them. Thank them. That is something that I've seen that happens. Students are offered a scholarship, and the organization giving them the scholarship really doesn't know what happened to their money. I actually had an organization that gave students a scholarship, and they said no one ever thanked them for it. So they were going to take their money and put it into something else, because the students they awarded the scholarships to never, fell off the face of the earth. They never stayed in touch with them. They never thanked them. So when someone does offer you a scholarship, it is really important that you tell them that you appreciate it, and that it's really good even in the future to stay in touch with them and let them know what you're doing in school and with the money that they gave you for the scholarship. Scholarships don't stop. A lot of students feel that when they graduate from high school, that's it, end of the road for the scholarships. There are so many scholarships out there that are available for current college students. So a lot of college students don't apply for scholarships when they should be doing that every single year. Because we're out of time.